$20 million. That's what Democrats are spending to figure out how to talk to young American men. They're calling it SAM, Speaking with American Men. SAM. And it's the most pathetic political science experiment that you've ever seen. They're actually infiltrating video games, studying viral syntax, and meeting at luxury hotels to decode why young men fled their party in droves. Excuse me. Meanwhile, these same young men are flocking to Trump, embracing traditional values and rejecting everything that the left stands for. The Democrat solution? Don't change their anti-male policies. Don't stop calling masculinity toxic. Just spend millions of dollars trying to trick men into voting for them again. This is desperation at its finest, and we're going to break it all down for you. And while the Democrats waste millions trying to win back young men, here's what really matters to guys taking charge of their lives, their health. Nearly half of American men suffer from high blood pressure, putting them at risk for heart disease and stroke. That's why I use GlycoBoost at boostwithgary.com, a doctor-formulated supplement with white mulberry leaf and cinnamon bark powder to naturally support blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar. No prescriptions, no side effects, just natural ingredients that work. Get up to 40% off, free shipping, and a 60-day guarantee at boostwithgary.com. Take control of your health naturally. That's boostwithgary.com. It's linked in the description. Okay, so The Hill's Brianna Joy Gray and Robby Soave just exposed the Democrats' desperate $20 million scheme to create what they're calling, ready for this, Blue Rogan, as in Joe Rogan. Yes, their laboratory-grown answer to losing young men to the right. Watch.
Can Democrats fix this problem by a strategic action plan costing millions and millions of dollars to grow in a laboratory Blue Rogan, Dem Rogan? I don't think so.
I think that they should avoid chasing the shiny new object, right? They tried that throughout Kamala's whole campaign, and it didn't really work. Even if the objects weren't new, they were like legendary stars that they brought to the table. These tactics don't work with like, hey, look at this. This is really popular. We're doing it now. I think the policy is really what matters. Talking back to those working class Americans that they lost. Somehow the Republican Party, the one to trickle down, became the working class party. And I don't know how we have these different conversations that 10 years ago we wouldn't have had. And I also think that Trump is an anomaly. So now that he can't run again in 4 years, we're going to have a different conversation around who the next two candidates are. And I think we might see a sway back to some normalcy of what the parties look like if both parties continue to fall in line. Like if Trump pushes through his tax cuts, if Democrats get back to the source and do some of the things that Bernie Sanders is calling for, is to get back to the people that we represented back in the day. I think that some of those can shift, but they need to just focus on what policies they want to put forward, and just think about what are we standing for in the midterms? What are we standing for in 2028? And the biggest problem to me with Democrats is that they complained throughout Trump's entire presidency. They complained about how bad it was, the end of democracy. They compared him several times to Hitler, but then the plan was mediocre at best. When it was time for Biden to run again, they made that decision. His team protected him in ways that we're understanding more now, put Kamala forward at the last minute. That wasn't a good strategy.
They can't buy authenticity in a lab. Young men see right through manufactured influencers and corporate messaging. Former Biden special assistant Megan Hayes appeared on MSDNC trying to defend the party's strategy. Watch her admit that Democrats have been hemorrhaging support for years, not just in one election cycle. Watch.
Megan, the Times also writes that Democrats have led, indeed, focus groups where voters are asked to name an animal that best describes the Democratic Party. One man said, a deer in headlights. You stand there and you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway. Changing perception, obviously, it's not a 1 month thing. It's not even a 1 year job. But what can Democrats do? Because the midterms will be here before they know it.
Right. I mean, the Democrats didn't get into this place of one election cycle. It wasn't just 2024. This has been going on for many years. So I think it's going to take the Democrats time. But I do think that that Congress was very aligned on their messaging with the bill that was passed in the House. And I think that they are very aligned and they're out there and talking to their communities and their constituents. And I think they need to be aligned on that and continue to stay aligned on. They care about the economy. They care about keeping 14 million people with their health insurance, and the 18 million kids keep getting food. And I think that those are the things that the Democrats are aligned on. I think they need to continue to stay aligned on what's important to the American people and what's important to the moderates. And that is the economy. It's the cost of housing, the cost of education, the cost of groceries. Those are the things that impact everyday people. And, you know, you're totally right. No one is talking about Joe Biden and who knew what when. They're talking about how much it is to pay for groceries and how they're going to get their kids to school every day. So it's just, we need to be more aligned with where people are who are actually voting and not what the DC bubble is.
So she's talking about caring about the economy while her party destroyed it. No wonder young men aren't buying what they're selling. And CNN's coverage revealed the stunning details of this SAM initiative. Listen as they break down how Democrats plan to infiltrate gaming spaces and manufacture viral content to trick young men back into their coalition. Watch.
So we mentioned new voters, which is also young voters, another way to say that. And now I want to talk about men. And here's something from the New York Times. This is written by our friend of the show, Shane Goldmacher. The prospectus for one new $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investments to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and the virility in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things. So you're the man here. I will not mansplain you. All I will say is, duh.
Yeah, I know. Look, they should have probably recognized this a couple of cycles before when this trend was growing very apparent. This was a huge problem for them in the past election cycle, and they need to figure it out, because right now the Democratic message is really all over the place. What do they exactly stand for as they head into the midterm elections? But right now it's a hope, really, among the Democratic leaders that that voters will recoil what they view as overreach from the Trump administration. They will make the argument that they need to be a check on Trump's power and to use Trump's push to move ahead with this so-called big beautiful bill, which rail about the tax cuts and that do benefit wealthy taxpayers, also other taxpayers too, but that does have an impact for them, and the impact on lower income working class voters, the healthcare cuts that they can face. Can they make that effective argument to win back the majority? We'll see.
$20 million to study syntax and virality. They still don't understand that young men want respect, not manipulation. So here's some more analysis from The Hill showing why this cultural divide has become impossible for Democrats to bridge. Young men have created their own ecosystem of podcasts and gaming and entertainment that rejects leftist ideology entirely. Watch.
It's fairly obvious the variety of reasons that young men have shifted to the right. Those things that they're mentioning, pop culture, video games, etc., podcasts. It used to be the case that not everything in our lives was political. Sports isn't necessarily political, and not all entertainment is political. There's a political dimension to some of it, but not all of it. But in these times where everything is so political and so high stakes at the presidential election level, politics has really seeped into everything, and it's also felt where this is for. It's all consistent now. If you watch these things, you like these things, you participate in these things, these are your activities, then you are a Republican who likes Trump. If you like these things and you have these cultural preferences and you associate with these people and you live in these places, then you are a liberal Democrat who likes cultural progressivism. And there's less and less overlap. Didn't used to be the case. If you go back, 50 years, there were people who, voted for a local Republican but had mostly Democratic friends, and maybe they voted for John Kennedy for president because they liked how he looked on TV. There was, what I mean? It was back, it wasn't all...
Some nuance in voting.
It was, right, it was more like you're part of a club and that membership has all sorts of different cast of characters and different preferences. Now you're all getting, this is everything, these are all the characteristics of these people, and these are all the characteristics of these people.
So politics has infected everything. And young men choose a side that doesn't hate them for being male. Political strategist Basil Smikle went on MSNBC and accidentally revealed the truth about how out of touch Democrats have become. Watch him admit that they're meeting in hotels instead of actual communities.
Because Democrats have been accused of looking and sounding too elitist. That's a problem. And the look, the reality is.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. You know what strikes me? Yeah. Because if you talk to some of these folks, and I can just tell you anecdotally, but you know, obviously there are lots of people doing focus groups on this. That these folks don't like Donald Trump. They don't want to vote for Donald Trump, and most of them won't vote for Donald Trump. But they don't have a darn good thing to say about the other side.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? When don't you start out ahead if they really dislike the other guys?
Well, you know, here's a good example. There's been a lot of conversation about what people knew about Joe Biden and when did they know it. To Megan's point, if you actually go into communities and talk to voters, they're not asking about Joe Biden. They're asking, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And if Democrats don't have an answer for that question, they're going to continue to lose support. Find answers, go into communities, actually amplify what neighborhood organizations, we talked in the last segment about violence disruptors. Talk to those folks because they're in these streets. There are really good examples of how people have taught each other, ministered to each other, clothed and fed each other, because particularly in the African-American community, we've always done that. So amplify those stories. But instead, you know, we're held up at hotels talking to each other.
Held up at hotels talking to each other. That's a perfect summary of Democrat strategy right there. And Megan Hayes returned to MSNBC to discuss the Democrats' anthropological approach to understanding young men. Her comments about studying voters like they're an alien species shows exactly why they're failing. Watch.
I want to bring in Megan Hayes, a former special assistant to President Biden, and Basil Smikle is back with me. You're both smiling. Donors and strategists, Megan, have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working class voters. The Times says these news projects can read like anthropological studies of people from faraway places. What do you see in here?
Well, it's great that we're being a little bit more introspective. That's always helpful. But I think that the Democrats have forgot that maybe we should just talk to people like people. We don't need to do studies on it. We don't need to meet at hotels. How about we just go to community meetings and meet people where they are on social media and their different forms and platforms that they are. But I think that the Democrats have forgot how to talk to normal people about things that are really important to them, like the economy. So it's I think, a really good lesson to learn, but I also think we just need to get back to basics.
Yeah, I think, Basil, another very informative little phrase, and you're the academic here, but when you're trying to figure out the syntax, language, and content, are you getting ahead?
Yeah, no, you're not. This is not, I really have no understanding what that is, because honestly, if somebody needed to come talk to me, just come talk to me. Actually, go find me and come and talk to me. Don't do it in a hotel. Don't study me like this is some academic exercise. That is exactly why we're not winning.
Don't study me like this is some academic exercise. Even their own strategists know this is insulting to voters. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she tried to deflect when asked about the party's image problem. Watch her dodge the question about why focus groups compare Democrats to scared animals. Watch.
I'm focused on the humans I represent, not, animal comparisons.
I will tell you, it was the voters who were making the comparison with animals, and this was a focus group. It wasn't the New York Times reporter coming up with these labels. This was a Democratic-led focus group to try to figure out perceptions of the parties.
Don, you said they were asked to compare the parties, so they were prompted to compare the parties to animals. That is ridiculous. I've watched a lot of focus groups, and I know that the people that I represent want me fighting for the humans, the families that I represent. They don't want Republicans transferring, more and more wealth to many more billionaires. They want to make sure that, like what Democrats did under Joe Biden, under a Democratic majority, we ensured that we cut taxes for the middle class, folks who put that money right back into the economy when they buy refrigerators with the windfall and other kinds of kinds of expenses. We made sure that we reduced prescription drug prices. We started to bring chip manufacturing back home. We passed the largest infrastructure and investment act in history, and now those jobs we're seeing come to fruition with rebuilding our infrastructure. That's what people want their government to do for them. They don't want a lawless dictator of a president who hires anti-Semites and who then acts like he's trying to fight to protect the Jewish community. The hypocrisy in this administration is appalling.
She can't even acknowledge that the problem exists. This is why young men are running away from Democrats at record speed. The New York Times bombshell report about Sam, also dissected on the Hill, and this segment reveals how Democrats plan to spend millions of dollars buying ads in video games to reach young male voters. Watch.
Well, a New York Times article is going viral on X for describing Democrats' plans to, you guessed it, find their own Joe Rogan.
The article is titled, 6 months later, Democrats are still searching for the path forward. The specific part of the article that grabbed many people's attention reads, quote, the prospectus for the one new $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is code named SAM, for short, Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises the investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games that Robby just played this weekend, among other things.
Codename Sam, that's what it is. $20 million studying viral content. Sounds more like a CIA operation than political outreach. Tim Pool joined Bill Maher to discuss the real reason that young men are embracing conservatism and traditional values. And their analysis cuts through the noise to explain this massive generational shift. Watch.
Tim Pool joined Bill Maher's Club Random podcast this week. The two discussed why young men have shifted toward Christianity and are voting Republican. Let's listen.
One thing I think is true is that conservatives had more kids in the 2000s. I know a lot of people want to claim these ideological victories where they say, like, we've red-pilled people. And among Gen Z, irrespective of that, there's been a rightward ideological shift among men. And I think this has to do with contemporary politics, movies, games, culture, etc.
And also men feeling that they were targeted unfairly. There is a lot of toxicity in being maleness. Some of that we can't control.
So men feel targeted and attacked by the left, so they're finding meaning in faith and family and conservative values instead. Chris Jansing on MSNBC summed up the Democrats' 6-month search for answers after their November defeat. What you're about to see perfectly captures their confusion about losing the young male vote. Watch.
The midterms fast approaching, and a full 6 months after November's electoral drubbing, the Democratic Party appears to still be in fact-finding mode. The New York Times reports that party donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working-class voters. And they're spending $20 million on an effort to try to figure out how to speak to young men. Quote, it is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces.
6 months later, and they still need $20 million to figure out how to talk to half the population. Unbelievable. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. It's time for my final thought. $20 million to learn how to talk to men. That is not just pathetic, it is insulting. Democrats spent years calling masculinity toxic, attacking traditional values, and wondering why young men abandoned them. Now they want to infiltrate video games and study viral syntax, like men are some kind of alien species to be decoded. So here's the truth they'll never understand. Young men didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left them. These men want purpose, they want respect, and a future where working hard actually pays off. And they found that with Donald Trump. They found it in conservative values. They found it in communities that celebrate strength instead of apologizing for it. So the left can spend $100 million and they still won't manufacture authenticity. So here's my question for you. Can Democrats ever win back young men without changing their anti-male policies? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments. And you can support real journalism at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. It is linked in the description.